Do a fishbowl here where I'd like to have, I did not include IPCA in this chart for two reasons. The big one being that you're a 1-week program and the others are 2 4-credit models and 2 2-credit models, and those are core courses and IPCA was an elective. So I opted to do the OB2 Social Change in Mali and New York, and the ICC in Turkey and in Mexico. And what I'd like to do is to ask for 2 representatives from each of those programs, and we'll do a fishbowl. And the question that I'm going to ask those of you in the fishbowl are, what did you see as the strengths of the course and the design, and what were the challenges of the course and the design as a student? And for those of you who are observers, I ask you to take notes of things that you think that are interesting out of that. And if you were a participant on one of those, you can have a little section in here about here's what they missed that I would have added. Okay? And then after we've exhausted what you have to say about this from the point of view of a student, I'm going to ask you to put yourself in the role of program designer and planner and answer the questions. Which stakeholders were most visible to you? Which ones seemed most valuable to the program's success? Who had the most control over the implementation of the program from where, if you were to look at this program, from where you were? And for you as observers to capture some of the responses to that you think are interesting or what you were surprised by, notes for the future conversation. And then we're going to split you up into small groups, and I'm going to ask you and mix you up in your groups. And then I'm going to ask you to share your observation notes and answer the question, which I will post. If you were suddenly put in charge as a team to repeat this course next year, what would you repeat and what would you do differently? Okay? Yeah, well this is it. Let's play with it, see what we come up with. Because now some of you, and we've had varying amounts of time that people have been home. So that'll give us, we talked a little bit before about what do you see as outcomes of these things when you've had a little distance. Those of you who did ICC have 3 weeks worth of distance, 4 weeks worth of distance, and OB2 people have minutes. IPCA has heartbeats. They're not even back yet. So, all right. So let's pull in 8 chairs, please. And can I have 2 people who did Mali, 2 people who did, 2 people who did Turkey, 2 who did Mexico, and who am I missing? New York City. Can we get them? Can you turn the light? The light? Yeah. Catherine, yes? New York? Jamie, Molly? Oh, no.
No, it's such a good
All right, so I know that these folks are your classmates, first and foremost, but some of these folks had the nerve to go on more than one program. So let's make sure we know who's doing what. New York, Mali, Turkey, New York, Turkey.
I guess we have 3 Turkeys.
That's okay.
Mexico.
And Mexico. Do I have everybody? All right. So, folks, as students, what are the strengths of your program?
We're going to have an order to this?
No,
And we're just speaking to each other, right? So
Yes, this is a fishbowl by now. Have a conversation.
Well, I'll start with one of the biggest strengths for the Mexico program was our host families. I think Some people, we had varied experiences within our group for how people were connected to their host families, but in general, I think overall, for the 16 of us that were there, they were very positive experiences. And so that, for me particularly, I was really wanting to go for language acquisition purposes. And so being able to like interact and be immersed in, like, I had a 6 and 7-year-old host brother and sister that chattered at me constantly. Like, it was a good exercise in being engaged. So.
I'd have to second that too. In Turkey as well, both homestays, we had homestays in Istanbul, very urban city setting, and then also a homestay in a rural village. Both fabulous experiences. I did see some challenges in certain situations because the host families were scattered out throughout the city. So for some people, it would take an hour to reach the meeting site, whereas for others, it was a 5-minute bus ride. So both sides of the coin there.
And for Turkey, the homestays, I think we kind of had a slight difference in that sense, but I think it was beneficial. The city homestays, I think for the most part, again, we had a big group, but for the most part, there were English speakers in the home. And I think the majority of us didn't take the language, and those that did had like very basic communication skills. So to have a person that you could really discuss your ideas with and the culture that you were seeing and the culture you were interacting with, like I found really beneficial and gave me a lot of insight into Turkish culture and what my host was feeling, whereas our rural homestays were Turkish speaking, and that was amazing in its own way. Lessons in nonverbal communication and culture, observing culture in a different way.
And I would add that having the opportunity to take a course in Turkish, an introductory course, I thought was great. I found it really helpful, and it was not just like language, it was also, there was some culture and there was some, you know, kind of other things that I felt really more prepared for, and I at least got there with basic communication skills, so I appreciate that it was offered.
In Mali, I saw 2 really huge strengths. The first was we were partnered with Malian university students, and there was a lot of learning through them about the culture and growing up in Mali. And we spent a lot of time with them and getting to know them. So that was really great. And then also working with IEP, the NGO there in Mali, and really getting to apply everything we learned in the fall to our time there with that organization.
Those were my 2 big ones as well, and I would add to that it was really rewarding to have that application be used for something. We were doing research more than just research for the sake of research, but to actually help IEP develop as an organization and help them in their education transformation efforts. So just the idea of us doing something for a reason, for a purpose, and to have them be following through on that right now is incredibly rewarding. So.
I think one of the other strengths for the Mexico program was that we weren't over-programmed. We had a lot of time to, I felt, well, you had a good host family, I disagree on a host family piece, but for me, being able to explore, we each had a window we had to go and we kind of focus on, not literally, and we were able to go do that independently, which to me was nice because I like to always travel on a big group.
For New York, I think that one of the strengths was also, I would say, one of the weaknesses, so I'll hold off on the weakness part now, but I think for New York, just the variety of organizations that we were exposed to, that we had the opportunity to meet and come in contact with, and also there was a good mix of autonomy and structure in the sense that there were required organizations, but then we also had some choice and independence within the course to choose organizations that we were interested in. So,
In addition to that, the variety of organizations was nice, but it was also really
having different speakers every day. So the combination of having, you know, the lectures in Brattleboro before and after, like with the professor, but then while we were in New York, there were almost no lectures by the professor. It was all guest lecturers, and that was really, really cool. That was, I mean, the variety and hearing different people's opinions and people that work in the field, people that used to teach, people that still teach, like the variety of different lecturing styles was very welcomed.
I'll also say a huge thing for Turkey was Rana, who was our in-country contact, translator, guide, negotiator. Yes, I mean, lifesaver. Yeah, she just really held that trip together.
And oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, in Mali also, the second week, we had some individual and some like smaller team site placements that were spread out throughout the country, and we each were doing research projects on different topics that IEP wanted us to research to help them better their organization, and Chris touched on that a little bit. It was really great to get to go out and see a bit more of Mali and really do this work for the organization and again apply the skills we learned.
On top of that, we got to tailor our research projects to our interests. There were a few research areas that IEP really needed to work on. So these were kind of outlined in the site descriptions. So we got to choose wherever we wanted to go based off of our interests and what we wanted to work on. And also, speaking of different organizations, we had a good variety of exposure to different organizations the first week, which kind of set a really good framework for our understanding of the Malian education system that we then got to apply when we went out into our research sites and got to kind of go off of. So.
In Mexico, I felt that we had a nice balance between guest lecturers and then actually going out to visit different programs or NGOs that were functioning in the area. We visited like a permaculture farm and an organization for women who are widows or need support like within their system or within their community, and they weave and they use like traditional arts to be able to do that. And so it was a way to be able to have kind of a different kind of window into not only the problems that like exist within Oaxaca state itself, but a lot of the opportunities that are there or that are surfacing, like coming out of that need. And there was a lot of networking that happened for some people while we were down there. Some people have set up possible practicums through a lot of the contacts that we made while we were there. So there was also that benefit as well, like making those personal connections with people who are actually on the ground working right now.
I think for like lectures and this, I think for Turkey, I think this was like good and bad. There were kind of two sides to this. I think in theory, it was really great. And we visited a nonprofit doing like women's rights, like domestic violence issues, and had a really great speaker. And we had 2 university lectures that we attended. One with Turkish students present and one just for us. So I think the idea of like interacting with the university, meeting university students, and visiting the nonprofit was good, but there were some good.
Heidi, you were talking about the people that were helping you in Turkey, or the person, and we also had amazing people that were supporting us. Deb and Aisha and Bubakar were helping us where we were staying, and Deb was our contact with the organization. They were incredible.
Yeah, just in general, a great support network, all based from or stemming off of the organization we were part of, IEP. Very organized, very pragmatic, effective organization.
Another unrelated strength of the New York program was combining the 2 courses, like combining organizational behavior 2 and social change. I think that it wouldn't have been the same if they'd been separated in our instance, just because we're actually analyzing the organizations that are doing social change. So the combination was just amazing. And the fact that we did get to visit so many organizations and have so many different ones come, it gave us the opportunity to use this analysis skills on dozens of social change organizations. So I just think that the variety and the depth was really beneficial.
And Chris, you talked about how you guys had a specific project that you were looking at to help you apply, and we had the same thing where we had all, prior to New York, picked an organization based in New York that we had an individual project for. So again, being able to apply the material right away and to have sort of a vested interest in a specific organization to be able to apply the learning to.
In Mexico as well, we were given an assignment that's called Photo Voice, and each of us had one disposable camera that we took with us, and it was, we had chosen before we got there what our one topic that we were going to focus on was going to be, and then we were asked to take pictures to represent that, and then we'll make a presentation when we come back. And what many people talked about during our final debriefing was that by having that photo voice, that thing that we knew we were focusing on, it helped you to be less overwhelmed by all of the changes, because there was still that one thing that you were always looking for that was specific to you. And it helped you to engage in the community kind of independently from the people that were around you, and to look for what you were interested in while you were there.
Similar in that, in Turkey we also had guide questions, and that ranged from looking at women's issues, food, culture, and so by choosing that, it was another way to kind of help focus in on an aspect of the culture that we were really interested in, and to really go deeper in the understanding of religion or gender issues.
And I think for me, like, that changed once we got there, and, we picked them ahead of time, but it changed, and, like, Linda was cool with that. It was really just, I think about, like, focusing, and I think the guides allowed that to take our interest and to take what we were most excited about in that environment and try and understand it on a deeper level. And that, like, I think the reflection, talking about assignments when we came back, like for me personally, I don't know about anyone else, but for me personally, the reflections were really beneficial to sit down and really process all the conversations I had and everything that we saw in the city and the village, and to put that into words and into writing for me was really, really helpful way to process all that information and all that learning and experience.
Especially when it was combined with theories and cultural models that we were asked to read beforehand. We have a general understanding of what those frameworks are supposed to mean, but it was really great to be able to make such a strong connection between those theories and the experiential side of it.
Similarly, and same as what Catherine said about New York, I think it was very beneficial to have OB2 and social change combined in Mali, and we also examined the organizational structure of IEP, and it was cool to see that in practice. So it was beneficial.
So what didn't work? What were the challenges of the course? You sort of scraped around the sides of that a little bit. What are some of the challenges that people noted as a student, not as the designer?
Well, as opposed to several of the other courses, Mali did not have homestays. And the whole time, while we were immersed in the sense of us having counterparts, Malian counterparts, and we had a lot of interaction with them, learn a lot about the culture through them, there was still kind of the sense of us having sort of a separation from the community, because we were kind of put in this like American compound, and we're kind of driven around by members of IEP, and it kind of felt like there was a few degrees of separation always. So homestays really would help strengthen that or diminish that separation.
Totally agree with that. I would also say that this is both a strength and a weakness, I guess, but our program was extremely academically rigorous. So we had 14-hour days, and even after dinner from 9 to 11, we'd have language and culture classes, and we didn't really have time once we got there to adjust to the time change or anything. We jumped right in, and it didn't leave any time for us to process everything we were seeing and learning and going through. And I think that would have been really beneficial.
I kind of felt the same way. Though it wasn't the same kind of rigor that I just felt like I never had time during the whole experience to process what was going on, other than, side conversations with students and that kind of thing. So that was really helpful for me.
In New York, we some days had so many site visits back to back, we never really had time to reflect. And I think that it was intended for it to be built into the mornings each day, but it never really happened. So we never really did break down any of the visits as a group, which was hard because not everyone went to every organization to begin with, so we didn't really get adequate opportunities to hear about the organizations we didn't get to visit. And also another weakness, I think, was that our schedule of visits wasn't really finalized until the last minute, so I don't think that we had sufficient time to research the organizations before going in, which meant the depth of analysis was not very deep often, because a lot of times we didn't know hardly anything about the organization before stepping into it. And I think, what would have helped would have to know exactly what organizations we were visiting in advance. That was really tough.
And I keep saying, like, I just like saying law of diminishing returns, because for me, that's kind of what it ended up being. And I understand, the philosophy and the structure of the course was to get exposure to as many things as possible from many organizations, which was amazing. But at the same time, for me, it became too much, and then it was just all noise. And so, and maybe that's me and that's my style and how I process, but on those particular days when we had so many site visits, I just got to a point where I almost shut down. Like, it was overloaded, and it was just not as valuable to me anymore. So
I almost feel like in Mexico it was kind of the opposite. And it could be a reflection of culture and a reflection of the professor who was leading us. But we had very little structure, and so you could really see, like, some students really thrive in that and were really excited by that, and that was really good for them. And then there were some people who really desired that structure and were questioning why are we here? Like, if we're not taking these classes, because for our program we're actually taking our final 7 hours of class this week during spring 1 on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And so for the things that we're covering, in some cases I have heard people say that a lot of what we're covering in these now finishing classes we could have done while we were in Mexico, and then not had to worry about it now during spring 1. So that has been kind of a point of contention, I think, for, like, among the 16 of us. There are people who fall kind of everywhere on that spectrum on how much free time we had. So.
And coming back to the theory in the classes, like, I actually had a harder time tying in the theory. I felt like I wish there was more, like, one of the pre-departure classes was, we did the little presentation, but I just felt like I didn't walk in there with enough kind of information or feeling like a sense of having strong enough theory or something. It didn't click for me. And then we tried to meet in the coffee shops about some of it, and it was just so noisy, and there were so many people in the group. I just felt like that was kind of tough too, having so many people. And then, like, trying to meet in environments that were public and very kind of hard to really pay attention and, like, absorb anything. Plus you're in the culture already, so you're already, like, taking in so much information that to take in more, I felt like I would have been better served to have done that piece of it in the US so that we weren't distracted. But that could, again, just be me.
To kind of jump off of that, on the sheet here, Turkey was the second largest group internationally, and it was as a participant, this was my first international experience traveling in a large group, and I found challenges with that. One being that I was always concerned about the safety of all the group members that were there, and so if they weren't there, there's just so many people to be keeping track of. So that it's a little nervous when you're trying to keep track of everybody, and there's that many people. And then also, a lot of people, you're a group, you're a tribe, you're traveling together. So if somebody's not there, you can't leave as a group. You have to stay together. And because people were on different schedules at different places, different spaces, it held the group back in a lot of ways. But it also there was benefits to it as well. So I think group size as a participant was a challenge for me.
And I'll second that. I think group size was an extreme challenge, like for us as students, and for we'll get into program design. But as a student, I mean, it was frustrating when people weren't on time or weren't accountable to themselves when many people were on time. So I think I felt like our large group size was constantly an issue and a challenge. And so I think that's a big downside. And I think that both like pre-departure and in-country were, like, I felt as a student like pre-departure I needed more logistics and I didn't get them. And so arriving in country after like travel struggles was a bit frantic. I mean, we managed, that's part of it, but more logistics perhaps could have been helpful. And in country, I think the lecture we had where we sat with Turkish students was in a way a missed opportunity to interact with them. I mean, some of us individually chose to interact, but I think more student partnership would have been nice. I lived with a university student and I loved having, she was 19 and we had really interesting conversations about education and Turkish culture. And I think that would have been nice for a university partnership on a deeper level would have been really great.
Regarding group size,
No, very good.
I think for me personally, it was an issue in a different way because we weren't traveling necessarily in a group. It was more of an issue in Brattleboro for me during lectures. And I think part of the problem was that there was too much flexibility in changing the structure of our lectures. So they were, intended to be, one group in the morning, one group in the afternoon, and of course, like weather became an issue. But even in addition to weather, I think that different groups had very different amounts of class time with lecture, and I think that was a problem both in understanding of the concepts and, just the amount of free time then you had if you were in class or in class. And even when we returned from New York, the plan had been to meet in the morning and the afternoon, or have one group in the morning, one group in the afternoon, and that just got thrown out and it ended up being a whole group every day. And I know with my learning style that was too big of a group and people couldn't contribute, the same voices get heard over and over, and that was a problem for me. 40 people is a lot when you're trying to talk about some of the issues that we tried to cover.
We had that problem even with 10 people, and we were staying in the same place and people were still late, and I think
That makes me feel better.
I think a big issue with that was setting group norms in the beginning and having strong leadership, and those things weren't established in the beginning of our trip for I think a variety of reasons. I mean, Marlo was supposed to lead it, and then there was a confusion with that, but because of that, a lot of the issues you were talking about too with getting the information we needed in a timely manner. Like, we were given assignments a week before Christmas that were due the day after Christmas and on New Year's Day, which
we were informed about via email.
Which, we were going on break, and then we didn't know, what people who were supposed to be able to answer questions like, what kind of shoes should we bring, how should we exchange our money, we didn't get the information and people had issues because only Visa cards were accepted in country at limited locations, and so that was kind of frustrating. And then also language. This is a point of contention amongst people on the trip, but personally I feel that some French should have been a requirement, specifically considering how the course was set up, and one of the purposes of us being there was conducting these research projects, and we didn't have specific translators. The university students were there to help translate for us, and they weren't trained, and a lot of information was lost, and they got really exhausted because their English was at varying levels. And then when we went on school visits, or we met with the Ministry of Education and different mayors and different local school boards, and things just took a lot longer, and in those meetings some information was lost, and it was exhausting for us too. So I feel like having some French, and then also some Bamanan, like I know people had the option to take Turkish all semester. I think having some Bamanan just to show that you're trying would have been really great.
Kind of expound off that.
Last statement.
Statement. Okay, I completely agree with all of that, and many of those things were things I was going to say. But just generally, as far as not enough preparation is concerned, how you were talking about the application of theory. Part of the reason why we were there was to use IEP as a case study and apply all the framework, all the theories we learned about in OB2 to IEP as an organization. However, we didn't really learn about how IEP works and is constructed until like one of the very last days of being there. Sure, we worked with them, but we didn't actually see an organogram. We weren't actually explained, how these things work until the end of our time there. So that was part of it. Also, a lack of clarity on our purpose, along with our Malian counterparts' purpose, being there. We were there as research students, all coming from a PI background at this point, and all here as education field practitioners, where they were there to learn English, and we weren't really told that. We weren't told about their purpose, and they weren't really told about our purpose until the very end. So that meant that working on a research project with them, it was kind of difficult, because we didn't want to take over. We had all this, experience in research and doing these kinds of things before, and they hadn't. They were just there to learn English. So it was kind of a very different thing, and it would have been helpful to have some clarification on that.
Can I try two very quick things from my people?
Very quick.
I think with logistics, making sure the logistics that are given are accurate. Like the first day that we were there, the address that we were given wasn't the actual address of where we were going, and that was an interesting way to start the trip. And then the second is that the primary way that we were communicated with was via email, which most of us didn't have access to while we were there. And so there were cases where we were told they were canceled, and then someone would change their mind, and then they were put up again, and then people would miss them because they didn't know that the classes had been reinstituted. And there was just communication issues across the board. So sorry.
That's all right. We could go. You can see all of the things here. There's so much to work with this term. All right. So this is a once around. Which stakeholder was most visible to you? Who seemed the most valuable to the program's success? And who had the most control of the implementation of your program? And I want to see if we get different answers, same answers. Linda's curious to see where we are right now. First question. Which stakeholder was most visible to you outside of you folks as students?
Oh, not counting the students.
Not counting you guys, because obviously it would be you all, because of the number, the sheer numbers. There's more of you than anybody else, right? So which stakeholder was most visible to you? Which stakeholder seemed most valuable to the program's success? And which stakeholder had the most control over the implementation of the program? I'm curious to see how these look to you all in the role of program designer and planner. What do you think?
What was the last one?
Who had the most control over the implementation of the program? And with these are not conversations, these are just, give me a person. Do you want to start in the middle, work your way around?
I can start.
Go ahead, Sean.
Okay, I would say the greatest stakeholder in Turkey was homestay families. Do we want description or do you just want a straight?
Just go.
Okay. Homestay families, greatest stakeholder, and our on-site coordinator, Rana, who was our tour guide for
Was
both.
the most valuable,
Most valuable, most,
had the most control over.
yeah.
All right. While we're on Turkey, let's do Turkey and get that done.
Yeah, I felt like our homestays were huge stakeholders in all of this, and I felt, I mean, and as far as visibility, yeah, I actually agree. I mean, Rana was, I think, on the ground implementation without Rana, I think this would have been a small nightmare. I think the bilingual aspect in and of itself was necessary, and she, has her things, but she was extremely valuable to making the program design actually implemented.
Heidi?
I agree.
Agree? All right, what about Mexico? Our other ICC 2 credit course.
I think the greatest stakeholder, I think, is just the one that was in my face all the time, so to speak, is the host families and the connections